Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for October 15th, 2021. I am Benji Fisher, moderating and sharing my screen. And also at the meeting are Gabriel Almeida, Gabor Hotzi, Marcos Lima, Mateus Macario, Offer Schall, and Paulo Enrique Cota Starling. Let me know if I've mispronounced any of your names too badly. I do my best. So let's see, I know we have at least some front-end and back-end developers. Do we have any designers at today's meeting? And I guess Gabor is at this point mostly project manager, although also has experience, of course, as back-end developer.
Yeah, not a designer for sure.
Okay. So what I would like to talk about are a few related issues related to the usability disaster known as the permissions page. So let me bring up a test site that I have running. And of course, if we go to the standard permissions page at admin people permissions, it is this long form. And this is, I think, with the Umami demo profile on a real site, it can get even longer. The more modules you have, the more permissions you have. And with 5 roles, you have 5 columns of permissions. Some sites have much more than that. And it's really terrible. So one thing we've already done is introduced pages for each module, or for 2 or 3, however many modules. And that's a much more manageable form. So that's great. We've already made a lot of progress. And I think if I go back to the issue for the meeting, the second issue that I mentioned, the fixed one, is the issue that provides that page. The first issue that I mentioned is that roles should depend on objects that are building the granted permissions. Let me demonstrate for you what that means in effect, or what effect that really has. So let's find a module that has permissions and that we don't mind disabling. So content translation, contextual links. Okay, I think we can afford to disable contextual links on my test module. So let's say we give all authenticated users permission to use contextual links. So I can save that. So now all authenticated users have that. But then let's say that I decide to uninstall that module. So I'll open the modules list in a separate page, go to the uninstall tab, and contextual. Oh no, I can't uninstall that because it's required by Layout Builder. Oh, so I need something else that I can disable. Filter module, certainly not. Interface translation? No, I think I need that. Layout Builder, media, node, I need all of these. Responsive image. Search. Can I disable search? Yes, search is something that I can disable. So suppose that I let all authenticated users use the advanced search. And actually, let me go to the simplified page showing just the permissions for the search module. But then I choose to uninstall the search module. And this is something you've never seen before unless you've played with 9.3, that one of the configurations that will be updated when I uninstall the search module are these roles that have permissions. So I go ahead and uninstall it. And of course, I forget whether this page gives me a 403. Access denied because the module is now uninstalled. But then maybe I change my mind again later and reinstall it. And before Drupal 9.3, what would happen is that those permissions would reappear magically. But with 9.3, only the administrator who has all permissions has permission to use any of the search permissions. And after re-enabling the module, you'll have to re-add permissions for it. So that's a change that has already gone in. And let me just pause for a moment for some administrative stuff. I need to take a screenshot of the participants list to make sure that I keep track. I usually try to do this in the background, but since I'm hogging the presentation, I need to pause. Okay, that's done. So those are the two issues that have already been fixed. The next big one, which I've been working on for the last several weeks, is issue 2934995, which is now at needs review. And this will add a manage permissions tab for every bundle that has associated permissions. So let me show you what that means. So let's go to structure, content types, article. So there's, of course, the edit page, the manage fields tab. What's new is the manage permissions tab. And this collects all the permissions related to the article content type. This is something I have wanted for a long time. And I think anyone who's administered a Drupal site has run into this. You know, we now have all the permissions from the node module related to the article content type. There are a lot of them, 2, 4, 6, 8. And this is much more convenient, than even the module specific page, because all of the create new content permissions for 1, 2, 3 content types are grouped together. And then all the delete any content types are grouped together. And what I have always wanted is those permissions to be grouped by content type. And now they are on this page. So I'm really hoping we can get this issue to RTBC and committed before the release of 9.3.0 Alpha 1, which is coming, I think, the week after next. So Gabor, can I get your opinion on whether that's a reasonable hope?
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of stuff going on right now. So.
I'm sure. So actually, several more people have joined the meeting. Let me acknowledge them so that it makes it into the recording. So Gabor, Aaron Mikhail has joined us, Beatriz Rodriguez. That's an odd username. Someone from C&T Technology, I guess, Anagomas. I've already mentioned Gabriel and
Sorry,
Marcos.
it's Anna.
Could you say again a little bit louder?
Yeah, sorry, it's Anna.
Anna, welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Marcus Vinicius Alves de Silva Souza. I think I mentioned Mateus and Arthur and Paolo before, and Italo Barbosa. And for those who've joined in the last few minutes, please comment either in the Zoom chat or in the UX channel in Slack or on the issue for today's meeting, which is 324-1537, so that I have your Drupal.org usernames and can give you credit. I'll post the link to the issue for today's meeting into this Zoom chat. So that's a big issue. I would really love to see it get in. There are a few related issues. Let me go back to, so one is the core ideas issue that discusses a better model for the permissions UI. That's 2919636. Perhaps we can spend a little time looking at that and considering other ways to improve the permission system. One issue, let's have a look at this. It's 2521758. Module anchors on the permissions page do not go where you would expect. And let me just demonstrate the issue. So let me just copy this URL. And that's funny. Do I need, since this is a multilingual site, do I need the language prefix? That is not working at all. Is comment not enabled? There we go. So there's a link that goes to the search section of the main modules page, but you notice that search is hidden behind this header and you have to scroll up a little bit to see it. So that issue that I was looking at, again, it's 2521758. There is a patch on the issue. It's sort of a front-end patch. It just adds an anchor link with the ID rather than attaching the ID to the existing div or whatever. So we'd need a front-end developer to have a look at that and decide whether that's really the appropriate solution. And the reason the issue is marked needs work is that it needs an automated test. I think probably a night watch test. But given the number of people on this meeting, perhaps someone can volunteer to step up and write an automated test for that and help move that issue along. Maybe someone would like to review whether that's the right front end solution. And Paolo has suggested that he'd have a look at that. Great. What are some of the other related issues? So one is, let me just briefly mention this because it's already RTBC. It's issue 3236443. Link to the module-specific permissions forms in the help pages. So that's pretty easy to demonstrate. If I just go to the main help page, and say, look at the overview for the user module. I've looked at that recently, so I'm sure that works. So currently, if you click on this link at the very bottom of the page to configure user permissions, I guess we don't have the problem we were just looking at because we end up at the very bottom of the page and user shows up. But we do end up on the main user page. This is the bottom of that very long page. So that issue says, change that link. So instead of going to this particular anchor on the page, it goes to the page just for the user module. So again, that issue is already RTBC. I only mention it because it's part of this large group of issues. And the last issue in this group that I'd like to look at, and I'm sorry I'm talking so much, I really shouldn't do that. I should be more of a moderator and invite comments. But let me just present this one more issue and then I'll do that. It's update the title of the module specific permissions pages. The issue number is 323-6447. I think, Gabriel, you've already assigned that to yourself and you plan to do some work on it.
That's correct.
So I think when we're looking at just a single module, it makes sense instead of module permissions to make it user module permissions or just user permissions. I think user module permissions is probably best. And the question is what to do when there's more than one.
And Benji, if you allow me to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been talking to with Paulo about this, and I think we are going to follow your suggestion of adding a list of links for each of the modules at the top of the page, like a header or something. But we are still we don't know yet how to dispose it in an elegant way, let's say. So I'm still talking with other people to see what's the best way to do it.
Yeah, that is exactly the problem. So we should have a link that goes to the content translation section, the node section, and the user section. And we're sort of limited by what we can do in an admin theme. But we want some sort of list of links and we want it to look somewhat decent. And I think a little design help or front end help would be needed here. Does anyone have any good suggestions off the top of their head of what it should look like?
If I, hi Benji, Aaron here. If I were to make a suggestion, I would say in this case, keep it simple and less is more. So for instance, a bulleted list of links is probably perfectly sufficient. In my opinion, at least, because I think there's not really much more we can do. Like all we really need is, we just want to very clearly, the point here is we want to very clearly convey what is this page. Like it's a page of permissions and it's about these specific modules. So I think just a list, like bulleted list with those links does that perfectly. I mean, maybe that, maybe if we saw that in reality and we saw it with certain modules that had a lot of dependencies, we would realize, oh, that's actually quite a big list sometimes, and maybe that's not a good idea. But I think that's at least a good first step, is to see what just a simple list would look like, and then we can maybe go from there. That would be my sort of recommendation here.
Okay, that certainly gives Gabrielle and others something to work with.
Thank you.
Any other suggestions?
Also, if I could just add, thank you, Benji, for collating all of this in such a concise way, because it's probably quite helpful too that you've sort of brought all these issues together into this, as you presented them in quite a clean and concise way. So thank you for the effort in doing that.
You're very welcome. Yeah, as we said at the start, it will be a challenge, but I think it would be good if we can get them all in to 9.3.0. We'll have sort of one big chunk of usability improvements to the permissions forms. But as Kapoor says, that's a stretch. It'll take some advocacy to make it happen, and of course some cooperation from the core committers. So I think I've succeeded in recruiting a little bit of help on these issues. So that was one of my goals for this meeting. I think perhaps some of the smaller ones have a chance of getting in after the alpha deadline. The main one of introducing the new tab. I think that's the one that's going to be hardest to make it in, but we'll do our best. And we're close to the halfway mark through the hour. Any other comments before we move on to something else?
I think if I could just add, there's one that there's another issue which is very close to being done, which we have looked at in the past, and I thought I'd just highlight it because it just needs Paolo's done some good work on it, and Lee Rowland is sort of working with me to review it, and it's the update help text on account cancellation screen, which is issue 319972. And just to highlight, you want me to read that again, or have you got that?
319972.
Yeah, so we looked at this, oh, maybe not.
Oh, wait.
Oh, you're in the ideas queue. There you go.
Yeah, do people know about the I redirect? Drupal.org/I/issue number will redirect you.
That's really handy. I only saw it the other day, actually. I need to update my because in my browser I have a sort of one of those search short things that you can do, where I have to do DNI and then press tab and put an issue number. Yeah, so for this one, we're so close. It just it probably doesn't need much more. We're just going back and forward on whether we can do some breaking changes to some translations. So it doesn't really need much to get it over the line, but the more eyes on it, I think, to just help move it along, the better. Because this is another, it'd be so great if we could get this into 9.3. But as I said, we've got Lee Rowland is working with us on this, and Paolo's on it as well. So but just thought since we're talking about issues that we want to get in, thought I'd mention this one as well, because I'm quite keen for this one. So
I tried to move this issue on. Okay, I have a look on the issue.
Yeah, it's I think since you last looked, there's maybe some comments from Laurelan. So yeah, thank you for your work on this as well. It's been really helpful to get it pushed forward.
Thank you for the review as well.
Oh, and did I remember to mention on that RTBC issue of changing the links on the help pages that Paolo is the one who implemented that? I think I may have forgotten to mention that. Another thing I forgot to mention is that especially with a large group as we have today, if it's easier for you to type rather than speak, I do keep an eye on the chat window, and I will read your comments into the recording so that they make it into the record. There were a couple of things I haven't mentioned. Paolo mentioned he's a backend developer, and I think Offer said, "Whoa," in response to my little demonstration of the I redirect. I don't think there's anything more substantive than that.
I have a logistical question, I guess, probably more for Gabor than anyone else. But with the issues that all coalesce around the permissions form and modules things, would it be useful, just assuming we can get them all done before 9.3, would it be useful to sort of have like a meta issue that brings them all together? It just if only to sort of help, maybe as Benji was trying to advocate for getting these kind of all in as one sort of group of issues and to sort of group them together in a way. I don't know if a meta issue would be helpful there.
I mean, that could be useful. I think there was already the list in the UX meeting issue, right? So that should be possible to meta add or something.
Yeah, I was also thinking from like a release notes perspective, if there was because I don't think any of these are, maybe they're big enough to get into the like the release highlights. Sorry, is what I meant. Maybe they're all, maybe some of them are, but if they were all as one big group, maybe that helps them. Maybe there's a highlight there.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
And related to that question, there's an issue tag for release highlights. Am I allowed to add that tag as a suggestion, or should I let the release managers handle that?
What would be handled by the release manager? Sorry.
Am I allowed to add the issue tag for release notes highlight?
I think you are. Yeah, sure. Yes, they will be removed if it's not appropriate. But so release notes highlights would be things that module developers and team developers would need to be aware of. And then there's the well, that's not even release notes. So there's a tag for 9.3.0 release notes. I think that's the tag. And the other tag is 9.3.0 highlights. And the highlights would go into the release announcement, and the release notes tagged ones would go into the release notes. And the release notes is developer focused. You need to update a site or a module. The highlights are more like promotion focused, like these are the shiny things that we put into this release. So
Okay.
that's different things. So the highlights would be the shiny things, yeah.
So
yeah, I guess if there was either for this issue or for like if we had a meta issue, that would probably be a then tag the meta issue would I guess is the probably what I was thinking as well.
okay, I think we can work that out offline, whether it's a meta issue or not. I will follow up on that. So we are halfway through the meeting, a little bit more. Again, are there issues other people would like to bring up? If not, then this is back to the issue meeting. I put in a link. DWW or Derek asked us to reconsider the recommendation on this issue. This is 332796. So as a 6-digit issue number, this is one that's been around for a long time, since 2008. So add permissions to the update.module to hide warnings. And there are two or three, I guess, three competing issues, competing solutions to the same problem. I guess the other one actively being considered is this one: show update notifications only with the permission administer software updates. And that's issue 3239970. So curiously, the issue number is about 10 times as high. This one was created in, the later one was created in 2021, just last month. So I guess the question is, or the problem is that the warnings when one of your modules needs an update can sometimes lead to alarm fatigue. The warning is always there, and a warning that's always there is one that will be ignored. And so the suggestion is to not show it to as many people. And then the question is whether we should tie it to an existing permission, so only show the warning to people who can do something about it, who can administer software updates, or whether we should create a new permission and tie the display of the warning messages to that. And I'm a little surprised we don't have screenshots, do we? We don't seem to have screenshots showing the problem. That's a little funny. But let's see, we've previously looked at that, and I commented after the October 1st usability meetings. That was 2 weeks ago. And I didn't make the comment until about 1 week ago. And I recommended the solution adding a new permission with the justification that, oh, Gabrielle says the last screenshot is on comment 35. So the issue I'm looking at. Ah, thank you. So the screenshot is attached, but not displayed as an image. That's not the screenshot I want. That's not the screenshot I want. At least I don't think. Okay, so yeah, those are not the screenshots I was looking for. I feel like Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I suggested that there might be some sites where it would be useful to show the warning even to people who don't have permission to do anything about it. For example, a site that has a few active content editors who are on the site every day and will see the warning, and an absentee or part-time administrator who has permission to do something about it was the use case that I suggested. So in comment 60, Derek suggested that he really prefers tying it to the existing permission. And he gives the argument that, one, we already have a mechanism for notifying that part-time administrator. We can send email notifications to that person. He brings up a lot of points that are, in my opinion, not related to usability. Basically, that it will be more work to implement a new permission. We might have to implement an update function and a test for that update function. And I guess just as Aaron says, less is more. Derek's argument is basically that the simpler solution is the better solution. And we don't need one more permission cluttering up our permissions form. And I've already replied that we did not make a strong recommendation in my initial comment. I did say that the usability group did not have a strong consensus, and I was giving the majority recommendation. And I think it's okay for them to overrule that. And most of the arguments that Derek brought up, I felt, are sort of not our business. They're implementation arguments rather than usability arguments. So I still think that the recommendation we gave is the one I would still make. But again, it's not a strong recommendation, and I think that that Derek, as a maintainer of the update module, can weigh the usability recommendation against the other factors that he has to consider. Opinions?
So I think there's a, as you put it quite concisely, there's definitely like a trade-off between, you know, like how much effort is it going to be to implement the perfect solution that covers every possible case versus like what is the way we can get this in like quickly and with minimal amount of like effort. And I think it is about balancing those two things. So I think there is some link, some meta kind of link between what's the usability and what's the like implementation effort. But I'm trying to remember when we reviewed this, because I was having deja vu as you were talking about. I was like, I'm sure we reviewed this, and then you reminded me with a comment there that we did review this. Yeah, so I'm just also trying to remember what it was, because I remember we had quite a bit of back and forth about like I think I was advocating for one thing and someone else was advocating for another thing, but I can't remember the exact details of it. But I think I come back to one of the things I think I said was, you know, if we look at who this is for, and you know, considering the different potential use cases here, you've got, you know, big sites with lots of content editors. You've got small sites with only a few editors, in the, you know, and maybe one administrator. In those small sites, maybe the administrator only logs in like once a year. Is it better for the content editors to get those notifications so that even if they can't do anything about the updates, they can still like get like they're aware of them, versus like in a large site where you definitely don't want people getting those updates, because you probably have a whole team of people managing updates, and they probably have a whole bespoke, you know, Git implementation with their own Git flow and all that kind of thing. So you know, it's probably a difficult one, but I think we really have to weigh up like what's the cost to adding another permission here in terms of like further cluttering an already cluttered permission UI, and the potential to miss this permission. Like it's already easy to forget that there's a separate administer software updates permission. Like I could so easily see for completely forgetting about a new permission that we add as well, if it's not displayed like directly below the administer software updates permission. So yeah, I don't know if any of that's helpful to anybody, but that's where my head is at regarding this.
So as for balancing the concerns, I think that is Derek's job as the maintainer. So I think that we as the usability group should focus on the usability question and make a recommendation, and either say this is a strong recommendation, or say, as I did, that that we did not actually have a strong consensus. and leave the balancing to them. So I think I've already commented to that effect. And unless we have some more opinions on this and reach a new consensus, I don't think we have anything more to say here. Okay, Aaron gives a thumbs up in the Zoom window.
Does that actually show? I can never tell if me giving a reaction like that actually shows to anybody other than in the participants window.
Well, I do keep an eye on the participants window, and that's where I saw it.
Ah, okay, yeah, so it is just there. Okay, all right, good to know you're keeping an eye on it then. But yeah, just to say, I sort of agree with what you're saying. I think you know, your logic there is very sound.
Gabrielle agrees in the Zoom Slack. Okay, so I think we can leave this issue as it is. And then we do have 10 or 15 minutes left in the hour. Let's go back to the issue on the core ideas queue. So this is design a better model for the permissions UI, and the issue number is 2919636. And I think that some of the core maintainers, I think XJM, the release manager, has sort of requested that these usability meetings pay more attention to the ideas issue queue. So this is partly in response to that request. So the core ideas are a place to discuss sort of blue sky options. What can we do to make big changes in Drupal and make things better? And this issue is about designing a better model for the permissions UI. And I think the things we talked about at the start of the meeting are sort of chipping away at that, basically giving alternatives to the one horrible long permissions page. So we don't need to go there if we have these more focused forms that are less overwhelming. But there are also other ideas. Back when people were excited about the idea of redesigning the admin UI using React or some other front-end framework, there were suggestions about doing that. But let's have a look at some of the ideas on this page and maybe see whether there are some things we can add to or some next steps we could take after the current batch of issues. Out of the box, it's already a hard list to scan, and it only gets worse when adding 10, 30 or more contrib modules, to the point where simply loading the page becomes a serious performance issue. And the current model of a grid lists all available permissions in rows, and all rows and columns needs a thorough rethink. Let's figure out a plan for how to do that. So the next steps: talk with site builders. How, when do permissions come into play? Map out the problem space. How could we group chunk divide this set into meaningful parts? And I guess that's the one we've already addressed. Sketched possible solutions and review which ideas to prototype. And then there's a list of several issues in various stages that might come into play. One is the concept of a hierarchical permission system. Another is with large numbers of permissions, the page becomes unusable. one we've already looked at to provide a module-specific permissions form. And then add a manage permissions tab for each bundle that has associated permissions. That's the one that's now needs review. Add more granular block permissions. So I think that's coming, but it's still needs work. And of course, that makes the problem worse by adding more permissions. But again, we'll now have a dedicated tab for each block type. So in the sense that makes it easier. Add permissions to regions and thereby blocks within them. I haven't looked at that. I don't know what the idea behind that is. And then some more closed issues, add per media type creation. So add permissions for each media type. Add a dedicated permission to access the term overview page. Something about access controls per forum. Adding a content editor role to the standard profile. I think that's now fixed, although it's marked here as needs review.
It might just be a caching issue there on the, sometimes it caches what the color is.
Yeah.
I think it's fixed now. That was fixed a while ago.
That's what I thought. Add role assigned to core and a fixed issue core modules to check the node modules access content permission for displaying things that have nothing to do with nodes. So are there any of these ideas that anyone would like to look at a little more closely? I think given the number of fixed issues, it's probably time to update this issue summary.
It's possible this might be the meta issue we were discussing, actually, now that I think about it. Because I think there's probably a reason this has sat in the ideas queue for like several years, and like this is a really hard problem to crack, because you basically have an expanding set of permissions in one direction and an expanding set of roles in another direction, and every possible combination in between. So like I think that this approach that we're taking of making these incremental improvements in very tangible ways, you know, the managed permissions tab, or that we looked at, all that kind of thing, is probably the best approach we can get at the moment. Personally, I can't envision a better way of managing permissions than what we have right now. But again, that might just be because I'm so used to the current UI. It would be great to have some solid sort of user research done into this, and maybe, you know, like user interviews.
I actually was thinking the same as Aaron. I think we have to research on users before, you know, doing next moves, because at the end, the majority of the users population that uses this will say what's better. Does that make sense?
Sure. So you both think that the next step should be some user interviews, find out what the use cases are that we should address next.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, because I think the problem with, like, this is why I think a meta issue would be really good to track this progress of all this kind of thing, because there's no way we're going to get one big issue that's going to address all of the problems. Like we have to make these incremental improvements, and then ideas will form from there. But if we could get some, like, you know, I don't know, just thinking if we have some, you know, people from the worked on admin UI initiative or other things, if they're, you know, if we have some people who are experienced in doing user interviews and user research, then and if we can find a group of users to, you know, sort of get their experiences, I think that's a good path.
Okay, so as part of my advocacy for the new tab, I will also update this issue summary and add a comment relating to the current batch of issues that I hope to get into 9.3. And I'll mention that we talked about this issue, and that we think the next step is to do some user interviews to figure out what the next set of use cases are. Sound good?
Yeah, I think the other thing to bear in mind is that like sometimes we, you know, for all we know, this issue could have been started and it was created in a time before we had these sort of improvements that we're seeing coming in now. And so there's a sort of a thing around, if we do user interviews, we might find that actually like there isn't a better interface than what we've got right now and the improvements we're making, but equally we might get some really tangible things out of it. And sometimes the problem with issues like this is they sometimes, and I'm not saying this, maybe this is an example, I'm not 100% sure, but they might try to create a problem that or like propose big solutions that maybe aren't achievable or aren't, you know, we want our solutions to be backed up by solid evidence. So that would be my only other concern, would be like, you know, there's not a, you know, if we have a big issue like redesign the permissions UI, like is that really the goal, or is the goal to just make it easier to manage permissions, you know? Like, and I think making it easier to manage permissions is a better goal than just redesign the UI.
Okay, so maybe we should even update the issue title. And Paolo says in the chat, the specific module permissions form is already a big improvement. I certainly agree with that. Although I think the new tab is an even bigger deal than that one, but that's just my personal opinion.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
It will be simpler to access it.
Okay, so I'm pretty confident it will go in, although it's a stretch to get it into 9.3. But it will go in at some point. And then once that's happened, and once all the issues that I listed before are in, and we have a good set of improvements, then it'll be time to start doing some user interviews and figure out where we want to go next with this. So we are close to the end of the hour. I think we've reached a good stopping point. Any closing comments?
Actually, I'm just gonna, as you were talking there, I was gonna suggest, is it actually worth maybe just marking this one as postponed on all those other issues, with essentially just what you were saying, like, let's get these done. And then when we've got the space to think about this in a bigger scale, we can like reopen it or repurpose it or open an all new issue.
I think as something in the ideas issue queue, that's not really necessary, but
Maybe we can
Proceed.
organize the issue summary.
yeah,
Okay,
I will update the issue summary, and I think just updating it will update those links to show the current statuses. So if there's nothing else, then thank you all for attending, and I hope we can get many of you back again next week.
Thank you, Aya. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.